Thank you very much for joining me. Laura Kell from Havas. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. Really good to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining me for a coffee this morning. Good to chat to you. What coffee have you gone for?
I got a black Americano.
Fantastic. A strong coffee for we're going to need for this subject, I think. There's quite a lot to get into. We can have a chat about AI, and I'm really looking forward to getting your viewpoints. Bit of fun to start with. How many friends do you have, Laura?
How many friends do I have? In real life or in fake life?
In real life. In real life. Yeah, real people friends.
In real life, how many friends do I have? I'd say that I've probably narrowed it down to 10 very, very important friends.
10, that's good.
Yeah, shall I name them?
No, but
They'll probably all be watching.
10
so they can try and work out if they're one of the 10.
That's it. We'll keep them surprising. Then everyone in your circle thinks they're one of your closest.
How many friends do you have, John?
I'm probably down to around 10 as well.
Yeah, you have to filter out, I think, as you get older.
That's it. You know, I've hit my 40s now, and you know, you have to priorities change. But if you're watching, you are one of my 10 special friends. Well, the thing is, Mark Zuckerberg thinks that people have 3 friends on average.
Oh, right. Okay, he probably does.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he has that many. But yeah, he thinks that the average person has 3 friends, and that they want meaningfully more friends from that he's going to create for them with AI.
Oh gosh!
And so I found that absolutely fascinating. That he thinks this is the future.
Design your ideal friend, perhaps.
Pretty much, yeah. So social interaction through.
I wonder if I could improve on one of my 10.
Imagine.
I guess probably this interview could be improved by AI, right? Like they could find a better substitute for both of us. Probably.
I mean, an AI would be a lot better than me at interviewing. But it's funny, isn't it? Just how quickly that's come about in terms of social interaction and how we're looking at it in terms of, you know, like, I mean, for Zuckerberg thinking it's a literal replacement for the friends you make. I think it's fascinating, and I think for me it's a question about the rise of AI and how quickly it's come about, and how have you seen it grow so far? I know, you know, we'll get on to work later, but in terms of your day-to-day, how do you feel AI is impacting it?
I think it's the difference would be generative AI. Right? Like, so AI has been around for absolutely ages. I suppose the change that's happened is the computing power able to process information. And so the shift in the industry and the shift in the narrative has come since the launch, since OpenAI, right?
Yeah.
And I think generative AI, the potential, the transformation from that, for me, when I think back to starting my career 20 years ago, there were projects we tried to do that were kind of impossible. Like things like, for example, we wanted to do a meta-analysis to understand how different creatives work and what parts of a creative generates the biggest impact, right? But and what this involved was, I remember I sat in a room and classified like about 1,500 creatives just by watching them, writing down. Now, that type of analysis, we're doing incredibly quickly now, of course, because we can use Gen AI to just extract elements of videos, and then we can run the analysis like in you know, we can do that classification in minutes. It took me like a day and a half and a bottle of wine to do it. You know?
Yeah, and it's, you know, that I think in terms of the efficiency that it offers, this is where it's, you know, interesting in terms of the agency landscape, I think, in particular, and where you know, where you're sitting and, you know, what you put together with Converge last year that we spoke about in our last chat.
To start with the generative AI, like the ability to quickly make sense of large data sets, the ability to quickly make sense of a large amount of information, you know, that's the thing that's transformative, right? Yeah. And the way that we've built it into Converge now is that it can, you know, the predictive AI models that we had in the past, which we were using to kind of optimize media allocation, things like that, with the best will in the world was slightly black boxy, and it was difficult for a planner to interact with them. Now what we can do is, as the audiences are optimizing, we can use generative AI to give a description of that audience so that the planner can interact with it as they normally do with pen portraits and things like that. So it means that it's a layer on top of the data that makes it easier to understand. The potential of AI agents, I think, is huge as well in terms of, you know, you set a goal and the agent can work out the steps in order to, the most efficient steps to achieve that goal. Yeah. Right? So from a marketing perspective, I want to grow consideration. I want to shift this. I want to engage this audience. The agent in principle can mine past data to tell you exactly how to do that.
Excellent. Does it excite you, that kind of stuff, in terms of your role and, like you say, the analysis of data?
Of course, yeah. I mean, that's, and I take zero credit. Like the team that I have working, which is led by Sarav Das, who's our head of data science and engineering, the potential. I mean, I've always wanted to automate planning, but now that we're getting closer to that, actually, you start to see what the reality of that is, in terms of where the limits are, right? And so I think it's really interesting that something that's gone from being a concept and something that would be nice to do, now that we can do it, we've got to start to think about how to do it. Within marketing, you're always looking for how do you get your client its competitive advantage. So that in that way, you have to then be different to the models or different to the standard.
Yeah, which is where the new arms race is coming in. This is how you have to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, and the dominance of like the tech giants in terms of, but if we're all using the same data sets and the same algorithms, we're not going to get competitive advantage. It's going to raise the floor, but then we have to make a new ceiling. If you think about how do we do that, you need to have unique data assets. So for our clients, their first-party data is the thing that they have that no one else has.
Yeah.
All right. So then, how you store, how you organize your first-party data, is absolutely critical. Right. I guess from a data perspective as well, your CRM, your customer data, will tell you who. You'll perhaps have an identifier in there. You'll have information on what they bought or how they interacted with you. But it doesn't tell you anything about who they are and what motivated their decision or, what would make them buy again. So in order to get that insight, you have to combine your CRM data with another data set, And I think that over-reliance on any one data set to give you all the answers will fail, because all of the data sets inherently will have a bias in them. Your customer data reflects the people who already buy from you.
Yeah, exactly.
Panel attitudinal data sets are brilliant for capturing how people think and feel, but dreadful at capturing what people do. So the approach that we take at Havas with Converged is we don't rely on one data set. We haven't made a huge investment in a single data set like some of the other agency groups have, because we think that can't work, because every data set has a bias. So we have a methodology to fuse data sets together so that we can get a proper view of who people are. So how they think and feel, what their behaviour is online, what they buy, and all of this comes from different data sets, the best-in-class data set to provide that information.
The creativity side is a really interesting point to touch on, because that's, we are seeing big brands experimenting with AI creative as well. I was reading this morning about Coca-Cola's campaign using pop culture when Coca-Cola has been mentioned in the past.
Yes.
And they did a poster using the Times J.G. Ballard mentioned Coca-Cola as a touch point, except that J.G. Ballard never wrote what they said he wrote, or that what the AI said he wrote.
Was it Coca-Cola did the advert with Kylie Jenner, or was that Pepsi?
That was Pepsi who did the Kylie. That was
Because I guess
that wasn't AI's fault. That one.
It wasn't.
Wasn't.
but then you could see that it's kind of blind insights, right? Like, so you think, okay, well, how do we be popular? We'll associate ourselves with a cultural figure. And it's good on paper, but it doesn't work in practice.
Yeah.
So that's, when we talked about creativity, I suppose it's, for creative optimization.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. I guess when I'm talking about creativity, what I mean is it's finding the insights that the computer can't. If I want to keep a job, I will need to be able to do something that's different to that. Or else I am adding no value, because my job could be replaced by a computer. I hope in the future my job hasn't been replaced by a computer and I watch this video and cry or something.
That's how the good old days when I worked. Now I just sit on a yacht.
And watch my video. No, I hope I'm on a yacht. I'll be fine with that. I mean, if I'm on a yacht.
If we find this happy medium, none of us work and we all get yachts, then fine, I'll sign up for that. Right. But no, it's, that creativity in, finding that finding thought in the data. Yeah. It's interesting. Early on in OpenAI's emergence, I had someone come on for a podcast from a creative studio, and he'd said that what they're using for at that time, which is about 2 years ago now, was they'd give it a creative brief, and then whatever it spat back out, they would know that was the cliche, that was what not to do?
Everyone can get to an answer, but probably the skill of finding the right question will be something that is much more valuable in the future.
Excellent, yeah. No, it's a nice way of thinking about it, actually, and hopeful way.
Start at schools. No, but I mean, it is going to be important, I think, because, well, of course it's important, because when you look at the future of the workforce, you know, invariably things must change, right? Because a lot of jobs, particularly in professional services, that have just been about finding and repeating information, you know.
Yeah. It's, I mean, for publishers, it's terrifying as well.
For lawyers,
yeah,
you know, like
God,
there's. Although I don't know that I would rely on a defence brief that was created entirely from a computer.
No.
But yet, you know, the vast libraries of information are now, you know, which used to be just the kind of available to the people who had the library, now can be accessed by anyone, I suppose.
Yeah, and you know, I think that's the sort of scares me a little bit, that shift from the professionalism of thinking of, you know, the law, of having a lawyer and then someone, you know, this is open to everyone now, these data sets, and you could put together a fairly comprehensive legal document without much training or without much expertise.
Yes. But then I suppose the skill of the judge to be able to apply human reasoning is important, right? And actually, I suppose there's an argument for, I'm just talking about lawyers now, but the democratisation, so that in the past where people would pay for a more expensive barrister, you know, now that everyone should have access to that level of service.
We're heading out to a dystopia now where it's just a computer sitting in a judge's chair, isn't it? And it just gives a tick or an X depending on how it sees the information.
There's something I read that really amused me, which is that if you ask an AI agent to solve climate change, it might just go and kill all humans.
Yeah, I read that
because,
as well.
Because you know humans are the cause of climate change, so therefore I fix climate change by killing humans.
Yep.
We had an amazing one. The team have built a wonderful tool for Matalan, and it's a really good example of what generative AI should be used for. So let's say Matalan have 10,000 pairs of socks on their website. And then previously it was the job of an individual to write the copy that goes on to the description of the product. Now, with the best will in the world, that is a very repetitive task for a person. You try and introduce some kind of rules-based system, but then it can sometimes come out with something that looks a bit gobbledygook. And with generative AI, what the team have been able to do is to write the text in a tone. You know, it can find the right words, but then also create the right language, so it's appealing. We can optimize then the product descriptions based on the interactions that they get. And it's delivered wonderful results, but there was an amusing one. I think it was a belt that was very good for tying up children. The generative AI didn't know that it had made a mistake. It's a belt ties things up, and it ties children up, you know. So, but you know, the new role then is, instead of writing the copy, you're checking the copy, right?
Yeah.
I suppose it would be similar to in the Industrial Revolution, right? You went from people crafting things by hand to people checking things on a production line, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And it's, you know, the Industrial Revolution, there were similar predictions about what would happen to the workforce, right? And there's an article I love. It's a small swear word, but it's called On Bullshit Jobs. I don't know if you've seen it. It was linked to the predictions that were made by Keynes, the economist.
Yeah.
He said that the Industrial Revolution would mean that with the automation of manual tasks, that people would be free to kind of, they would work 15-hour working weeks and would be free to pursue kind of creative and intellectual passions and stuff. And that didn't happen. Because, and what happened instead was the advent of professional services, really.
Yeah.
Which he describes as bullshit jobs.
Yeah.
But then I suppose it is, you know, that there will likely be a change in the workforce, right?
Yeah, on a similar theme, I was reading, I think it was Socrates.
Oh, you've gone highbrow.
Oh no, I went very highbrow. Socrates' thought on the written word and
Right.
books when it first emerged, and he feared that people who wrote and were able to write down would outsource their brains to paper.
Oh, gosh.
So God, even books were considered a threat to humanity at one point.
Sorry, I don't know how far we're going to go into this, but like, you know, when the Bible was translated from Latin into English, right? Like, it just meant all of a sudden that more people could read it. You know, so the printing press was such a revolution, you know.
Yeah, and you know, people, well, the Luddites didn't like that.
Is this as big as the printing press? What do we think?
I don't know, honestly. It feels transformative in terms of what the options that open up. And, you know, like you said, they thought there would be 15-hour working weeks after the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
I'm talking about sitting on a yacht while AI does my work for me.
We're not going to be sat on yachts, sorry.
No, there's no yachts. There's going to be a longer working week where we check what the machines have written.
Yes, and the machine never stops working, so
No,
we have to be on alert to it all the way through the day.
I can see, you know, with your work and what you're doing at Havas, you can see how it does excite you. What part of it scares you, if any? What concerns you regarding it?
I guess there's two main things that I would raise as concerns. One would be bias that would come out if you're just repeating the past. You know, there could be biases in terms of the way that people are represented, different groups are represented, which we just continue because we're just kind of continuing to play back the same information unless we look for new ways to do things. So bias in the data sets would be one thing. The environmental impact as well, because Ruth and my team told me that, you know, if I put into Google search, I hope I don't misrepresent this, but best holiday in Bali, it would come up with a load of links to places that I might want to go, and hopefully some of those have been tailored to me and what have you. If you write it in Generative, in ChatGPT, the same query takes 10 times more energy.
Yeah.
So, you know, I kind of, like, if you then think about the kind of exponential growth in these types of queries, I mean, presumably the processing power will get better, and I think that that's what's needed to enable AI agents to properly work, for example. But it feels like that would be an unforeseen or perhaps not thought about consequence of the rise of AI and the energy that it takes to process it.
I think the climate point is terrifying. You know, that amount of power and that amount of, you know, when we're looking down the barrel of some form of climate crisis anyway, it's hard to that we're only extrapolating the whole thing.
Yes, that it's we're kind of like in one movement we are making everyone unemployed, destroying the planet. You know, so it's whether that's dramatic, I'm not sure. I still think that the rules of marketing apply. You know, like if we look at the types of creatives that would resonate with people, things that make people laugh or tap into a human emotion, and actually engage with people on a human level. Yeah. I told you before, I've just got a beautiful little puppy called Buster, and I think I've watched every single video on YouTube about Boston Terriers. And as we're going through them, I'm like, this one's AI, turn this off. Because you can tell straight away, it's not good content. It doesn't tell me about how to, you know, what to do in the first weeks when you're puppy training and things like that.
Is that because you're discerning and you're from, you know, the media world and you know what to look for? Is it a concern for...
It could be. I mean, but I've fallen for things as well before. And I guess if we think about it from the perspective of the brands that we work with, you know, you want a brand to be a trusted voice, a voice that can engage with people. Yeah. And that's how brands remain meaningful, right? So making sure that you build something that resonates with people and how they think and feel. Yeah,
so people are still important. I think brands are in... I feel like brands are in a testing phase at the moment where we're, like I said about the Coca-Cola example, they're using Gen AI to throw stuff out there, see what sticks. But ultimately, it still has to be...
Well, it might get thrown right back at them.
And it will, and people will be able to discern it. I've seen some, for want of a better word, some real crap come out recently. There's an agency, or if there was a bit more of an arbiter of quality, perhaps would have told them isn't great quality, but it's...
But saying that then, also, you know, if you think about the barriers to getting on an advert on TV is the cost of building the creative. Now, if that barrier can be removed, then you can, you know, it gives a much fairer playing field, right? And that allows companies to grow in ways that they weren't able to before because they just lacked the resource, right?
Yeah. Amazing. Laura, thanks so much for joining me. I've enjoyed chatting to you. I'd say we'd have you back in a few months to discuss the movements of AI.
I'm going to be on a yacht.
You'll be on a yacht. And to be honest, the way it's changing, it could be weeks rather than months. Yeah. So, but yeah, enjoy the yacht and best of luck with the Boston Terrier. And I'll have you back for a coffee anytime. Thank you so much.
All right.